Panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen. The topic of discussion is Empower, Adapt, Thrive, Reskilling and Upskilling for an Ever-Ready Workforce. Please put your hands together for the moderator of this panel discussion, Akash Chatterjee, MDP, BCG. A round of applause, please, for Mr. Chatterjee. Sir, if you could please take one of the center seats. And let's keep that applause coming for our eminent speakers. Rachna Kumar, CHRO, Hero Motorcorp. Vinay Razdan, CHRO, HDFC Bank. Tarun N.P. Verma, Global Chief HR and Sustainability Officer, Tata Consumer Products. Keep that applause coming, ladies and gentlemen. Rahul Sinha, CHRO, Pidilite. Welcome, sir. And Chandra Bhattacharjee, CHRO, Textiles Business, Aditya Birla Group. Welcome to each of you.
Good morning everyone. My name is Akash. I was just introduced, and it's a pleasure to be moderating this excellent session. I'll just maybe take the first few minutes to set a little bit of context, right? So we're talking about skilling overall, but I'll just break that down, the two facets of skilling that we are talking about, which is upskilling and reskilling, right? So upskilling essentially is building upon similar or allied skills. So the idea is, as any employee in the organization progresses to similar larger roles or allied roles which naturally fit in with his or her experience, there is a level of upskilling, and that learning journey is upskilling. While reskilling, on the other hand, is essentially a completely new skill. So acquiring a different set of skills. I'm moving from, let's say, operations into finance. Very different skill set. So that would be reskilling, right? So as an example, and to make this more resonant and relevant for us, a digital marketing role picking up data analytics skills is upskilling. A factory manager who has been working as a shift supervisor, learning how to manage programming, monitoring robots, because there is a lot of automation at the factory or the unit, is reskilling. Right? So I just wanted to set a little bit of context. The other part, before I kind of hand this over to the group one by one, is I'm a consultant at heart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a little bit of outside data across, and not just in India, but globally. And I'm going to just reference a few data points from some surveys that BCG has done in the last few months. So we did this survey called the Bionic Workforce Diagnostic. We did this a few months back. And as part of that, we actually covered about 13,000 employees across 18 different countries. And the idea of that survey was to look at what really is skill disruption. What's happening around us. The lens, of course, given the recency, was to a large extent Gen AI and the broader AI. So what we found out that in the next few years, and when I say few years, we're talking 2 to 3 years, 10% of the skills would be completely replaced by Gen AI. There would be about 60% of the skills, which is 3 out of 5 skills as we know today in this room, would be partially or reasonably impacted by Gen AI or other technologies like that. There would be a few jobs which would be completely redundant or completely changed, if I would rephrase that, right? So think a copywriter job, think a marketing manager job, think a research analyst role. Our survey actually said that 90% of the skill required in that job would be completely redundant and different, right? So just a perspective about how it's not about skills that will change, but they are already changing, right? And I'll overlay this with now a view of organizations sticking to skilling and reskilling. So we did another survey called the BCG Reskilling Survey. We covered about 1,200 organizations globally. What we found out is that about 56%, so a little more than 1 out of 2 of these organizations, are already implementing, not just talking about, but implementing reskilling in some form or the other. In terms of the spend, and this is a global average, so bear with me. What came out was about $2,600 is being spent annually per employee. So roughly about 2 lakhs per person in our terms, in our currencies, right? Now, what's interesting is that when we probed further and we said that how much of this is actually leading to quantified impact, only 40% or 2 out of 5 organizations said there is at least some amount of positive impact or ROI of the effects. So everyone's talking about it. Our survey, the first survey that I quoted is talking about the vehement need for it. The second one I talked about is half of them are doing it, but only 2 out of 5 of the ones doing it are actually seeing positive impact or able to measure positive impact, right? Now, this is just a little bit of an outside-in perspective, but at this point, I'm going to bring this panel in, and I'm going to ask one question to each of you, and more at a generic level. It could extend beyond your organizations. Given the half-life of technologies is shrinking, right? So think of a 40-year work span. Earlier, maybe an individual employee would be looking at 2, at most 3 shifts, significant shifts. Now we're talking about 6 to 8 shifts. 2 years down the line, that may be much higher, right? So how do you see skilling, and more specifically upskilling or reskilling, as a competitive advantage for businesses, given this scenario? And maybe, Vinay, we can start that in that order and go.
Good morning. Thank you to ETHR for inviting me here. Wonderful to connect up with seasoned audiences, already finding a lot of common connects. And essential caveat for a banker. I have not been a career banker. I've been a banker for the last 6 years only. So all views are my personal views, not attributable to the organization. Akash may not agree with the way I'm going to start the discussion, but when you come to a lot of these forums, they will have you believe, and don't take offense, any one of you, all good friends here, but the world that you're going to wake up to tomorrow is going to be so different that you'll be redundant. And it induces a sense of pessimism and sense of anxiety and sense of what's going to happen, at the fast changing world. Essentially, where is this whole discussion of skilling and reskilling, upskilling coming from is to do with rate of change. And rate of change in the society, in the world, whether it's flow of capital, whether it's flow of labor, whether it's flow of technology, and the both trigger point, if you really look at it over a 20, 30-year spectrum, is the whole technology boost which came about post-2000, which is feeding and leading this new innovative business models, which is creating this debate around whether your skills are relevant today and will they be relevant for tomorrow, or so on and so forth. Now, one of the most potent examples of disruption is the phone that we carry. It impacted the camera industry. It impacted the calculator industry. It impacted the, watch industry. You won't believe, but 25 years back, I used to carry a device, electronic device, in which I used to input the addresses and telephone numbers of people. It was meant for that only. I don't even know where it is now, obviously. And many other things. Convergence of technology is the biggest trigger for shift in models of business, and so on and so forth. I may take a little more time. You can adjust my time later. How many of you are HR professionals here? Lots of people. Okay, so let me just do a simple check, which I did in the morning whilst on my way here. What are the new skills required in HR? Organization, communication skills, leadership, adaptability, recruitment, business administration, active listening, coaching, emotional intelligence, the list goes on. I, as function head today, one of the skills I would value very highly in my team a simple ability to do a job evaluation and analysis, sizing up a job, because this is a major conflict point in the business, that what is a job's worth in a hierarchy of jobs, in a function, and across functions in relation to other jobs, because your compensation, your promotion, your designation, benefits, everything is linked to that. I don't find it anywhere here. You talk about, in a distribution oriented business, you talk about having a sales incentive plan, right? Specific skill. We don't talk about it here in the list that I read, random list, okay? Point I'm trying to make is that this whole debate on skilling is very important, and it cannot be dealt with at a macro level. You have to bring it to the ground. It has to have a micro detailing to it. It has to have a granularity to it. If you as HR professionals are going to spearhead this transformation in your organizations about upskilling, reskilling, and all the associated things, then you have to do it first for yourselves. Today, we continue to hire for roles, we continue to hire for capability. IT industry has shown us that having a skill matrix across in the organization is what matters. You should hire for skills, you should develop for skills, you should assess for skills, you should reward for skills. We don't do that. And there's a larger issue. How many organizations are actually doing a future oriented, where will I be 36 months hence, and therefore what do I need, and therefore what do I have in a gap analysis, which leads to that also doesn't happen in most organizations. We Indians love a chaotic environment. Our societies are chaotic, our organizations are also chaotic, by design, because that's how we are culturally as people. Western organizations perhaps will be very different in that sense. So I think this debate is very, very important, and I can read a lot of data, which if you give me time later, I will do that, but which essentially reinforces the point which Akash made about a lot of skill shortages on one end. Fortunately for us, a lot of people availability on the other end. So question is bridging the gap. And that's the key here, and all of you can play a critical role there. Akash, over to you.
Thanks, Vinay. Am I audible? Yeah. Tarun, if I could bring you in on the same question.
Yeah, I think Vinay put it quite beautifully. I'll probably say that one thing we got to figure out is our own ego. We're all highly paid folks in the industry, lots of whom do studies, join these panels, talk about skills, and then do nothing about it, which I think is the biggest issue which we right now face. We all know that there are known unknowns. There is plenty of research. I'm sure we hired BCG for it, and we get lots of insights around it, and then we go back and say, do nothing. Why? Because the more things change, the more things the same. And therefore, I think the unfair part which we do is we inflict this change suddenly onto people in the organization who have the least amount of influence to do anything about it. And then we wake up on December 29th, 2029 to say on January 1, 2030, everything will change. And that results in mass levels of anxiety, the issue of skills, utilization, where am I redundant? That is what I think we ourselves inflict. So my request and my point here, I think, is simply as senior leaders who are there in organizations, all the wonderful research you do, act now. Don't let your ego come in the middle, and don't let people who have the least influence get affected by this.
If you don't mind, can you please repeat the question?
Of course. I said that, Vinay and Tarun also now kind of added to that the half-life of change, I said technology, but any change, like Vinay said, right? He used the phone as an example. Earlier, we would go through a 40-year life cycle with maybe 2 or 3 significant changes for an employee. Today, that number is 6 or 8. I think 2 years down the line, that number would be maybe 10 or 12, which essentially means that either I change the person every few years, or I change the skill of the person as an organization. So how do you see skilling, therefore, upskilling / reskilling, as a competitive advantage to businesses?
Okay. See, there is no doubt that, if your employees are skilled, your business is going to be competitive. There is no doubt about that. But what I want to really say is that I agree with you that people will definitely have at least one or two career changes. And that means complete functional changes. Gone are the days where, we passed out from college with a particular, let's say, marketing specialization or HR specialization, and then we work 30, 35 years in the same stream. I think that is going to be past, and there will come every 10 years or 6 years, 8 years, where they will have to shift. So I think this aspect of skilling, reskilling is more important, and upskilling is more important for the individual than the organization. And that is where I believe that as organization we have to just we have to have a little different strategy. Our strategy has been that we keep pushing training, we keep pushing skilling. In fact, that's why 40% only have said that they have got some results. I am of the firm belief that you have to create pull in the organization for training, for skilling, and you have to tell people, guys, here all this training is available. So organizations have to make it available, but we are not going to really push it down your throat. You please get skilled, you please show the competencies, as Vinay said, you please show the competencies which you need in this job. Otherwise, sorry, we will have to replace you. So I think the creating the pull is very important, and I will talk about it later, that how we in our organization, and I am firmly believing in creating the pull and how we work together to create that. So that is my feeling, that organizations are large. Organizations are, as we say in economics, we say these are perpetual entities. So organizations are built to last. Individuals are not perpetual entities. So we don't have to worry about organizations, we have to worry about individuals and how we are going to skill and upskill ourselves. This is what I feel. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chandra. Rachna, if I could bring you into the chat.
Hello. Yeah. So hi, I'm just taking a little industry view here. Not is it okay? Yeah. Okay. Now I'm just saying, taking a little industry view, because so I come from Hero. It's an automotive industry. Many of us know huge transformation is happening in that product industry itself, right? So we are seeing huge transformation happening from the combustion engines to the electric vehicles. We are seeing connected product and technology. So the product which never used to talk technology, now it is connected and integrated. Then we are talking about this whole customer dynamics with more disposable and discretionary income, more informed customer. Your customer requirements are changing, right? Therefore, how do you pitch the products? What do you sell? The other piece is around this whole conversation around sustainability and responsiveness. And then on top of everything needs to be connected. There is this whole thing around generative AI and how you can use it. Now, all of this is changing. I would think, therefore, if you were to make sense going forward, I would think individual capabilities to handle all of this is required. Major upskilling is required, at least in this industry, even from a technology viewpoint. We are talking 30 million EV vehicles on the ground. We don't have ready talent, not in India, not even globally. So what do you do, right? You start somewhere. How do you do? So all of those collaborations. Second piece is you can't do it alone. As Tarun was mentioning, right? You can't. So how do you partner? With whom do you partner? Who is taking the first advantage? There's no first advantage. It has to be a collective advantage. So, thinking beyond what individually as an entity you can do, or as an individual, to moving to a place which is more collaborative. So I would think reskilling is important, not only at an individual level or organizational level and an industry level, for us to be relevant.
Thanks, Rachna. And maybe, just on that one, as you talked about collaborating and partnerships, I just anecdotally want to share something. The Singapore government, actually for the last few years, uh, they've identified some hot skills, some key skills for the future. And they've identified a cadre of people within Singapore. This is across the board, across organizations. And the government has invested in helping skill people on these. So we are working in designing that, as there are others as well. But that's the level of partnership, collaboration. It cuts across different institutes, different corporates, and it's essentially from a future skill perspective. But Rahul, bringing you into the chat, what's your perspective on this?
Hi, uh, morning everyone. So, one advantage of going last in any round is that you have the benefit of all the wisdom that has already come. And I'm therefore going to borrow a few lines from what you guys have spoken and make my 3 points. Chandra's point that this is really about people and not organization is actually the starting point as far as I'm concerned. And I'm a great believer on actionability of any discussion. So I'm going to restrict myself to 3 things that we should start doing. Number one, borrow the theory from the Chinese and start teaching people how to fish. Don't worry about their dinner tonight. Don't worry about their dinner tomorrow. Teach them how to fish. In this case, make them realize that learning, reskilling, upskilling is the only way they survive now as it goes forward. You don't pass with one degree and then work for 34 years or 35 years. You actually pass with a degree, work for 7, reskill, work for another 10, once more reskill, keep working, and that's how it is going to be. So this means that our educational institutions have to change the way they think. This means HR teams have to think differently. But most important, this means that individuals have to think differently. The onus is on you and not the organization. Yep, so that's the first thing that we must start doing. And this has to be possibly taught, told, and sometimes by shaking people up and saying, world has changed, change. That's number one. Number two, how you spend your L&D budgets. What do you put it on? Changes. If what Rachna says, and I've also been reading about it, is going to happen, you're not going to be putting money in terms of teaching people about various other things that you have been teaching so far if you're in the automotive sector. You would have to start worrying about how do I get my workforce ready for the world that is about to happen. 30 million EVs would mean it's a different way the world moves. I'm thinking, where are the petrol pumps and what are they going to start doing next? Will they become food courts? Will they have charging ports? Will the shop become bigger and the number of petrol bunks or diesel bunks go down and maybe parking spaces with charging points? Things change. The whole thing is going to change. So people in automotive sector will have to start thinking very differently. So where do you spend your L&D budget needs to start changing. And maybe HR professionals, all of us sitting here, would rather start worrying about that. So maybe all the long strategies of investment in HR needs to go short. And you need to keep the money for something else. And maybe all the senior guys seated here need to start by learning that in their industry, what should be the focus of L&D now. So the organization, to borrow from Chandra's point, if it has to be perpetual, has to start thinking how to change, how to adapt itself. And the HR guys have to be at the forefront of that. COVID was a disruption and you were at the forefront. This is a disruption bigger than COVID. Thankfully, nobody is dying out of it, but people will get redundant. So otherwise, in this particular case, you may not be a perpetual organization anymore. Look at the top 30 organization list, and that has changed in the last 20 years. And that would mean that you would need to worry about this. And so that's the second action point. And the third action point that I would worry about is what are we talking about this in the boardrooms? Are we already making the organization aware of this? Are we influencing the priority of the corporate in this direction? That's something that I would carry back as an action point for myself. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rahul. So I'm going to make this more specific to each of your industries and organizations now. And I'll kind of go one by one. So Tarun, if I could start with you. Given the extreme diversity of your product portfolio, right, and therefore the other end, the consumers who consume that portfolio, how important is skilling, upskilling, reskilling for your workforce from a future lens, from an innovation perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Akash. And the panel itself is quite a diverse panel out here, so I'm sure all of us have. I can borrow this comment कि आपने मेरा नमक तो खाया होगा because नमक हो तो टाटा नमक, right? So I come from the world of consumer products. I'm sure you've begun your day by drinking my cup of tea. Hopefully there's tea outside. Please try it out. It's deadly. The point I'm making is I have to ensure that you don't lose, or I don't lose your trust. You as my consumer and you as my employee. And to me, that is the fundamental space out here. Take, for example, the fact that we're all sitting in a room, and I know my friends at the Taj, we're all great friends, but I can see that they've placed plastic bottles for you. Today, my mechanical engineers, my polymer engineers who are working on bottles are worried that sustainability is becoming a huge thing, and they're saying consumers will not take a plastic bottle. Thankfully, my colleagues at Starbucks have stopped serving you your favorite coffee in plastic. They will give you only the Hutamaki paper cups, which is good for you, but we're going to cut a few more trees. So there's no perfect solution. But my employee is worried, saying that if the consumer is not buying, then will my job be at stake? So my consumers changing preferences, whether it's about their ability to consider a particular brand, product, packaging, all of that is resulting in a huge amount of requirement for us to think ahead of the game on change. The changes are primarily on 3 accounts. The first, of course, is in terms of the product itself. So today, for example, all of us want taste, lekin taste bhi or health bhi. Now that's a very, very interesting place to walk, which means that you have enough of more people, social influencers, who are finally looking at every item that is going in. इसमें कितना PFA है, कितना SFA है, कितना salt है, कितना sugar है, कितना. And suddenly my product manager, the brand manager, is becoming a regulatory head and a legal person more than the creative marketing person that the person used to be. Number 2, process. You walk into any of our factories, manufacturing sites, etc. The conversation is no more about what is the today's OEEs and productivity and efficiency. The conversation is about green, renewable manufacturing. The first slide put up is we have put up X amount of gigawatts of solar energy, and therefore we are bringing in X amount of ratios. The process itself is going through so much of change that my production manager is thinking more about what is the kind of process which I should do so that my consumer finds it more acceptable. Number 3 is packaging. We are in the FMCG business. My fundamental thing that you will see is my packaging. Today I have consumers, thanks to Gen AI, using many such tools, and I won't tell you which tools, otherwise you end up doing the same thing to me, sending us packaging design options, saying, I would like you to change Tata Tea Premium to this because it, I think, represents. Now, imagine, there were days when your label, your packaging was like a holy cow. No marketing manager worth their salt would ever let anyone touch it. I mean, try doing this to Fevicol and saying, let me try and change this, right, Rahul? I mean, that's what would probably happen. But someone actually told us, can you change the Tata Tea label to this? And my brand managers actually this time on Mother's Day, if some of you have seen it, actually changed it. So that is causing a change in terms of their ability to think. So product, process, packaging, trust in terms of my consumer, am I relatable to what their preferences are? And therefore my employees trust, saying, listen, I am ensuring that I am ahead of the game and ensuring that you're skilled for that particular purpose.
Interesting. Thanks, Tarun, for that. I'm going to bring you in, Rachna. And you kind of already started a little bit on that track where you spoke about EVs, and Rahul kind of also talked about it. So yours is an industry which is completely changed, right? If you look at the last few years, the people, the leaders you would have, the skills they would have looked at, very different from the skills ahead. So how are you guys looking at skilling?
So two aspects. One is this whole piece around leadership skills and what we require in the leaders. The other piece was where I was referring to, which was more technical and functional. My sense is when we're looking at leaders, the one skill that is absolutely required irrespective is your ability to deal with ambiguity. Things are changing. You need not get panicky about it because that's going to stay. So one of the things that we definitely now look at is dealing with ambiguity and consequently the change management part of it. The second part is dealing with ambiguity, then linked with agility. As the word changes, how agile are you in terms of your mindset? Now, that's more from a leadership perspective. And we have started talking about future fit organization, not only from the structures, but also from the processes, the thinking and response time. So that's important. Coming on the other side, as I was talking about partnership, that's a big struggle. It's easier because not much is changing when it comes to leadership or behavior nuances, right? We know how to do it in a sense, right? It is more individual driven. You just need to do a little good job around it. What is really changing where the answers do not exist is this whole functional bit which is happening. Companies investing hugely into R&Ds. Most of the globe, when it comes to automotive, they're looking at China, and we know our situation here. We are going global. We are hiring talent which is across the globe because you do not have those functional competence in-house in the country. So you are, and again, I was just borrowing. How do you define the roles now, right? Because the roles, their shape, their size, their worthiness, everything is changing, right? There's no definition of the role as much, right? So what we are now doing in Hero, and we are nascent, and I think the entire industry is learning. One is this whole collaborative efforts with the government of India. So we have tie-up with the Automotive R&D, Research Association of India. We are having accredited courses along with automotive skill development. Now that's for the workers. Now understand, the bread and butter is 90% still combustion engines. But the future is EV and alternate fuels and hybrid. 90% is still continuing. You need that workforce, those skills in the system from a manufacturing perspective. But at the same time, start moving very, very quickly as the world is changing, right? And you don't have the luxury of asking everybody to go because there is no talent in any which case. And then you are responsive as an organization. You won't let go of your people as well, right? So how do you therefore upskill and have that transition? Second is then the partnership with the innovation startups. That's a big one in the industry because not everybody can invest energies in every technology. So you have startups which are more niche startups, so you know what you need. You just tie up and hook up. The third is this advantage from an industry perspective. Everybody is grappling with it. Nobody would have enough money and resources and the time to invest. Go collective. The word now is not about how are you building your competitive advantage. How collectively are you really working towards it is important. Then we are now having a huge tie-up with academia, both in India. So we have IITs within a framework with whom we work very, very closely. Then we have, say, for example, battery management. We know it is Germany and it is Munich. So universities across the world. So this whole upskilling piece or new skilling piece, it has to be seen a little beyond and future. And everybody is in the phase of right now creating. So, and do we have the time? The answer is no, right? And so therefore there is a very different challenge. But as Tarun was mentioning, I think this whole conversation about Uh, individual accountability first in terms of learning is very, very important, but that has to be backed by the organization.
Thanks, Rasma. Now I'm gonna just take what you just spoke about, and Vinay, I'm gonna bring you in. There's this adage, right? As more things change, the more they remain the same. I feel it's just like you were just talking about it, but even in banking, you have fintech, you have digital banking, but then you also have the very core state banking, which hasn't really changed and possibly should not change. So, how do you look at those two very different worlds in banking from a skilling perspective within the org?
So let me try and bucket them in a loose way. We are about 215,000 people in the bank. It's a huge organization. And we have a branch network of close to about 8.5, 9,000, which we are expanding by about 1,000 branches, almost ballpark every year. So you need a branch manager, you need a teller, you need a personal banker, you need a sales officer associated with that. Now, typical strategy obviously would be to send some of your older employees into these new uh, places, along with having very strong uh, onboarding mechanisms where they're taken through what they need to be conscious about, what they need to be. Compliance is very big in banking. Risk is very big in banking. You don't want to hire people who have a sense of adventure. You don't want people with sense of adventure handling your money, right? So compliance and risk and complying with the regulations is very, very important. So there's a set of people that everyday basis you need to ensure that they are in line with whatever the regulations are and the processes and norms and policies are. Second dimension, in fact, it's a all pervasive dimension, is that at the end of the day, the objective of every business is to service the customer, right? Now, the customer base for the 95 million that it is contains or consists of all sort of people with different preferences. You will have people who will still want to be handled in a old style way, if I may say that, physical way, who still like to come to a branch. And that's true with a lot of old people, in fact. They want to come to a branch. It's a social experience for them, which they don't want to let go of. And there are a set of people, many of them are present here, youngsters who are on the go all the time and they don't have time to do anything else except on their mobile. So that's the set of people also that you need to serve. And therefore, the challenge is on all the things that we talk about: AI, we talk about cyber security, we talk about digital hyper personalization. All that comes in, and how do you eventually make it easier for your customer, and how do you make the experience better? That's really what you are trying to go at all the time, and that's a ever evolving process, and it's not over the last few years we have invested in a learning platform. We have and COVID helped us there, because prior to COVID we were doing a lot of our stuff in a physical way, but COVID ensured that. So we got more than 84,000 digital assets in place. Last year we had 32 lakh training hours, digital training hours recorded. Physical training hours are over and above that. So huge investments in ensuring that people are aware and they are in line with whatever regulatory and compliance norms are there. And also technology helps, because to how do you ensure in any organization, the challenge is that you got a lot of learning assets. They should be in one place and they should be accessible in the flow of work. Okay, so the new platform that we have, which was Edcast earlier, and Cornerstone bought them over, besides the tie-up with Harvard Management and the Skillsoft and all that IMs, we've got plenty of information out there. We've got a lot of policies, process, regulations, everything in one place. So a person in the flow of work can go, check, and come back and continue with the work that the person is doing. So that is the backbone that you need to provide, right? But still, the larger debate or larger, I think, opportunity, if I may say so, is that we talk about, every change comes across as a threat. But I think youngsters don't like to be tied to a job, tied to a career for long years in a firm. My son is 1 year in his job and he's talking about changing the job. I'm shocked. So, but I think it's an opportunity also. If you accumulate and acquire set of prized skills, then you don't need to serve in one firm. You can be a person who gives service to multiple firms. You can be an entrepreneur much earlier, and I think that's the key. That's how younger generation should view it. The whole skilling up debate is terrific entrepreneurial opportunity.
Chandra, I'm going to bring you in next. And, given a fairly mature industry that textiles is, a storied organization that yours is, how does skilling look like in your organization? Is that a challenge given that there is a certain set way of doing things sometimes? How are you dealing with it?
So that's a very interesting question. So I would like to share what we are doing. So first is, as Rachna mentioned, that there is a large workforce which is on the shop floor. And what we are doing, and I will keep it short because I'm mindful of the time. What we are doing is we are giving them, app-based learning, which is short modules of learning. Of course, safety training takes a lot of priority in that. So that's what we are doing for the shop floor. And let's say for the management cadre, of course, mindset and leadership competencies continue. But for there, I can lean into the group infrastructure and get very good learning. But at the business level, we have embarked on a journey of digital transformation, where we want people to use simple Excel skills smarter way. Then we are going to transform them into BI, and then go into use of AI, Gen AI selectively. So that's the transformation. But the way we actually drive our learning in our business is that, like I say, that I like people to take charge. So for this digital intervention, what we did is, first we did a survey, self-survey, where people need to realize, oh, I don't know this area. So I think the first step about learning is the feeling that, okay, I don't know, and if I don't know, then I'm out of the race. So we did a survey. Secondly, what we're doing is digital training, all of you know, is expensive. I can't train everybody. So the core team I train is going to do train the trainer programs and reach out to the last mile. So that is the other initiative which we are doing. And all this is backed up with a lot of recognition of the trainers, of people who are completing the courses and doing the projects where the trainers are going to help them. So I believe that first of all, for learning, we have to get the individual interested. And after that, we have to provide the interested individuals the recognition and the forums to take their learning, keep learning, share their learning, and build. So we have embarked on a very exciting journey, and I am very positive that textiles business and our business also, a little bit I will tell you, it's very like we have got a B2C business also. I think all of us know about Linen Club. Okay, so we are actually the nation's leader in linen apparel, which is the fashion apparel. So that's where we are actually at B2C. So, we have got a retail stores. So there the know-how has to be very different. And interestingly, I have now in this business for 1 year. And I mean, you're from BCG, you will know, it is amazing the amount of data you need to actually run a textiles business. It is amazing. I don't know if any of you are in textiles. Textiles is a very narrow margin business, but it's a very interesting, very challenging business, because you will make money only if you are actually digital in this business. Whereas actually it's like 100-year-old or even, that kind of a business. So it is about, and I want to take my people from digital to insights. That's the journey actually we are
Sure.
on,
Thanks,
So
thanks,
yeah,
Chandra.
thank you.
Thanks. So finally, Rahul, coming to you. And, one of the things Tarun spoke about, trust. I just want to build on top of that. Sometimes what happens, what we've seen with organizations, and especially yours, where there is huge trust in your products for so long, it builds this air of, why do I need to change? So is that a problem, one? And if so, how do you tackle with that from a skilling perspective within your organization?
Akash, so lovely question. I think if people trust you, it is one of the hardest thing to own, and you work really hard to keep it going. The amount of time we would spend to ensure uh, we live up to that is practically all our time. And you got to therefore be ready for what they're looking for before they start looking for. And in our case, we have a lot of people who aren't very educated in the traditional sense of the word. They are they are craftsmen, they are handymen. They know their subject. If you are ever in doubt, trust the carpenter, trust the plumber, trust the mason to know exactly how this is going to work. And they are also very precise in what they look for. If your product doesn't live up to that, they will change your product. So to keep their trust on, you have to know their language, you have to keep up with them, and you need to keep understanding what they're looking for. And where are they picking it up? They are picking it up all the time from all over the world. If we thought they were not influenced by social media or by YouTube or by what's happening abroad, that's not true. They're very, very well networked. They're very well, they spend a lot of time learning it. So they will ask you very specifically. They, of course, don't know the actual term, so they're not going to say VOC, but they're going to say, smell nahi karna chahiye. Haath mein lagna nahi chahiye. You got to understand what are they asking for, and then you have to be ready for it. So learning, reskilling, upskilling have been the way of life for us, and we are happy that we have been able to enjoy their trust. And I think that's the one thing we would fight for, die for if required. We are not going to let it go so easily.
Thanks, Rahul. Okay, great, excellent. I think this has been lovely. I know we're up on our time. I'm just going to take maybe 30 seconds, some very interesting points that came up. And, Vinay, you spoke about micro detailing skilling. It needs to be made very granular and specific to each industry. And we have to do it first. Change starts with us. Tarun, I loved your point about the suddenness of change. And you said, look, we have all the information, we have all the data. As leaders, we need to act on that now and not tomorrow. Chandra, your point on perpetual organizations, but individuals not being so and therefore needing to stay relevant. And therefore create a pull for rather than a push for skilling. And Rachna, of course, I think your point on collaborating and partnering for skilling and something you said you as an industry already doing, I think stood out for me. And finally, Rahul, teaching people how to fish. That, skilling as an ongoing art and therefore needed for not just thriving, but even surviving potentially for all of us. And the onus being on individuals is something that came across from all of you. So thank you so much. Thank you very much, everyone. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this. If you have questions, feel free to catch up outside. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give this panel a louder round of applause for that very engaging discussion. Thank you so much to each of you.